Welcome to selfdiscoveryradio.com, where the orchard of wisdom is just ready for picking. We celebrate your why, the journey that you've taken that inspires someone else. We support your services, we support your story. Come and be our guest, become a host, be an author with us. Come and see what we've got. Our next show is... Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Eco Solutions. And I am delighted to have this wonderful woman back here with me, Polly Higgins from England, and you're going to know why. I'm your host, Sara Troy. First and foremost, please would you go back and listen to her original show that she did with me now 3 years ago, and you'll understand what drives her, what is leading her down this wonderful path of ecocide. And what is ecocide? Well, ecocide is a loss of damage to or destruction of the ecosystem of a given territory, such that of a peaceful enjoyment to the inhabitants that has been or will be severely diminished. This is a beautiful law that she's bringing about, ecocide law, and the law puts people and planet first before profit. Wow, what a concept. We actually know that profit is what's been raping and pillaging this planet. And so having a law in place that says you can't do that anymore, you have to look to alternative energies, you have to look to alternative ways of producing things and no more damaging this planet. Because folks, as much as you watch all those wonderful disaster movies and we all leave this planet and go off to destroy another planet, it's not happening. This is your one Earth. You need to step up and be a part of its survival because it's your survival. And Polly has been dedicated a number of years to this, and she's really heart-driven on saving this planet, but inviting you, the participant of this planet, to come and join in and do your part, because it's not that difficult. It's just a few changes of practices. It's being aware, it's signing things, and it's standing up for this beautiful earth. So let's get behind Polly. Let's understand how we can be a part of it, what is being done to protect us, because this is about protecting us, the planet, and us, the species on it. Okay, and so when we all become a participant of that, we actually really do resolve things. So Polly, wonderful to have you back here, my love.
Well, absolutely fantastic to be with you again, Sara. Really lovely. Thank you for inviting me back.
It's been a while, because you're a hard woman to get hold of nowadays, because I know that you are deeply immersed in this. And that so much is happening since we last did our show 3 years ago. And, I talk about you and what you're doing a great deal because of the movement, because of the education, and because you've dedicated yourself to making this just a law. A law. Ecocide is a law against harming the planet and the people on it. And you've got quite a number of countries that have signed up to that. But let's first really understand what this law is. What does it mean for us?
Well, I think the core aspect that is often misunderstood is that this is a criminal law. And often even lawyers don't really recognize the difference between civil law and criminal law. So I'll give you an example of that. For instance, Sea Shepherd is an organization out there that I had a conversation with earlier today. Sea Shepherd have been campaigning and taking direct action for a number of years now against the killing of minke whales in the Japanese seas, high seas, and actually on other seas as well. And despite the fact that they have a judgment from the International Court of Justice declaring that what the Japanese are doing is illegal, despite the fact that the federal government in Australia has given a legal judgment declaring it as unlawful, nevertheless, it continues. And in fact, they themselves have had to stop their campaigning going into the seas and trying to stop the fishermen that are sent out to do it, because it's government sanctioned. The Japanese government sanctions the killings of the whales for whale meat and for Japanese industry. Now, the biggest problem they have there is that it's not recognized as a crime internationally. Getting a judgment from the International Court of Justice is just a legal opinion. And it's a legal opinion that can make a declaration But if that country is sanctioning that industrial activity, they're not going to be inclined to follow any legal opinion condemning it. Likewise, receiving an opinion from a civil court in another country, it can be ignored. But when it becomes an international crime, what it does is it actually gives power to the judiciary. It means that the whole justice system can kick into gear. So international arrest warrants can be issued to prosecute whoever is the directing mind of that company that's going in, sending the boats out there to kill the whales. In fact, an international arrest warrant can be put out against the minister who's signing off on the permits to allow companies to do that. Now, I'm just giving you one example here of how an international crime of ecocide will give the enforcement, the criminal legal enforcement that's lacking at the moment for such a campaign to stop the killing of those whales. It can be used in a multitude of many different ways. With ecocide being a crime, it means that we can do the same to stop the destruction of the Amazon, for instance. We can stop the raising of huge forests, burning them to the ground for palm oil production, for instance. We can deal with a multitude of different ecocides and different levels of dangerous industrial activity, but also, most importantly, we can use it to prohibit and prevent and also preempt dangerous industrial activity that exacerbates climate change.
All right.
That's critical when we're looking at fossil fuel extraction, which is one of the largest carbon majors we have out there that's exacerbating climate change today.
It's kind of the UN for ecology, you know.
It is. It's an international crime which actually it operates through one of the UN organs, which is the International Criminal Court. That's correct.
Now, how is this enforced? Because, as you said, the law is there. I don't care about my country's still going to do this. So how is a law enforced without it being perceived as an act of war? Because, you know, we hear this all the time. If you're forcing a country to do something against its will, then it's an act of war. But do they recognize that it's an international law? Is it fines? What's the reputation on it?
Yeah. So the starting point is when you create an international criminal law, then it becomes legally binding on all the signatory states to the International Criminal Court. At the moment, there are 124 countries in the world that are signatory states to the International Criminal Court. So automatically, they'll transpose it into their own national legislation. And under what's known as universal jurisdiction, then if someone from another country who's committing ecocide under the auspices of their government or corporation, then an international arrest warrant can be issued and they can be arrested and indeed tried in a country that upholds that international crime. Now, that's very useful when you get a country such as your own, the United States, who are not signatories to the International Criminal Court. The US does not recognize the authority of the International Criminal Court. However, what it does do is it marginalizes activities. So US transnational corporations who are operating internationally and are committing ecocide are suddenly restricted in where they can continue to do that without being prosecuted. And it limits them to basically the countries that are not signatories. Otherwise, they'll be picked up on international arrest warrants and tried elsewhere, or in the countries where they do cause the ecocides. So what happens is you have major players suddenly becoming minor players because we, in essence, change the international rules of the game, of commerce, of engagement, politically, of how we govern our earth. And that's very important because we're dealing with the most serious crimes of concern for humanity as a whole. You know, we already have genocide, we already have war crimes. Crimes of aggression was just signed off in December in the United Nations. I was there when that took place. And crimes against humanity is the fourth one. So we're seeing there's a missing fifth one that must attend to the most pressing concern of the 21st century. In the 20th century, it was genocide. In the 21st century, it's ecocide.
Yes. I mean, saving the people is wonderful, but if we have no planet for them, what are we going to do about that? And we've been very kind of opulent thinking of there's more, I can have more, and we've become a very wasteful society. A young lady I'm going to be introducing you to, Renee Schlotter, I can't pronounce her surname, but she did a wonderful documentary called Normal is Over, where it's just finding out what really is causing the ecological problem. And of course, it is our consumerism. And if you look at the last 30 years, everything has been about buy more, buy more. You're not happy unless you have more. And you forget about preparing a meal from vegetables grown in your garden. Pop to the supermarket and buy these GMOs. And, we're seeing that laziness, or that it's quick and easy, and then waste. There was a video the other day of a whale that kept beaching itself, and eventually, it died. And when they cut it open, the amount of plastic they found in there was just heart-wrenching. And we're killing our sea life with plastic. We really do have to wake up to the fact that although there are countries that are completely ignoring things, and therefore this is the reason why this law needs to be into place, but it also does come down onto us as individuals, on our daily lives, our daily practices of what we use, how we use it, how we dispose of it, and to be really more conscious of it, isn't it? Because we can look to government and go, it's their fault, they're doing this, but it's all e-commerce to them, right? It's all about keeping the money going. If you stop purchasing, then the money is going to have to be put into other things, and it can be put into things that actually can generate more friendly fuel, etc.
Yes, and that does certainly get us so far. However, if we don't hold our governments to account for their failure to stop harmful practices, such as prohibit fossil fuel extraction, which of course will then mean that the plastics industry will stop overnight because it's a byproduct of the fossil fuel extractive industries, then it's going to be a long time in coming.
Yeah.
So this is about fast tracking it. And for all of those who are already out there as essentially conscientious protectors, if you like, making sure that, I know this myself. In fact, today I was in a supermarket, which was possibly the first time in about, maybe the second time in the last 7 years, and how I was finding myself cringing at the counter that here I was buying admittedly organic, but it was covered in plastic.
Yeah.
And having to do this because actually my local health food store didn't have them loose, and we needed certain things. And I wouldn't normally do that. And I found myself at the checkout thinking, what do I do? I actually feel really deeply uncomfortable about having to be complicit in a system that is causing harm.
Yes.
This is plastic, which, yes, has automatically gone into my recycle bin. I don't want to be adding extra plastic in my recycle bin. And, this is why I have huge admiration for, we call them conscientious protectors, those who actually stand up on the front line to stop the serious harm, the ecocides, those who are standing up against the pipeline, for instance.
Yes.
Here in the UK, it's the activists standing up who are, they're in their protection camps, protecting their communities against fracking.
Yes.
And the amazing thing is we have a government in place that's criminalizing the protectors, the conscientious.
Well, you had the pipeline here. I'm in Canada, and I know fracking is a huge problem here in Canada. And of course, there's the whole pipeline thing going on at the present moment with Morgan, whatever. And but in America, with the watching the whole pipeline thing going on there, the literally one girl lost her arm. Grenades and water things, etc. And it's like treating these people as if they're the ones committing the genocide, and they're just standing up for their planet. They're standing up for what is right. But America has gone backwards quite considerably in this last couple of years, and I don't know. It's going to take something rather radical, I think, to for it to change. I'm kind of hoping, whether they've signed on or not, that their practice will be deemed criminal, and that your law will actually have power to go in there and change things, because it's not going to come naturally under the particular regime that it is in now. And I know here in Canada, it's the fracking is the problem.
Forgive me. Sorry.
That's okay. And you're right. We have to hold the governments accountable. And there's been so much complacency with the governments, just like, I'm in power, I can do what I want. We arrest those people, make sure the cameras aren't on them, treat them as the criminals. Yeah. And we have to hold them accountable. You're going for the top. We at the so-called at the bottom of this pyramid here, with our practices and how we buy, how we eat our food, everything else, we can be a part of that, most certainly. But you're going right for the jugular. And if we really want to make an impact, we do have to do that.
Well, what's very interesting is that if we look back in history, we've done it before and we can do it again. Mm-hmm. So it came from individuals out in the front line refusing, back in the 20th century, refusing to go fight in war. They were conscientious objectors. They said, no, we're not going to do that. We don't agree with this. We think this is all wrong. It's causing serious harm to humanity. Mm-hmm. We refuse to be complicit in this. And many of them, in fact, were imprisoned, and some were even shot for standing up for peace.
Yes, yes.
But by the end of World War II, after World War II, in fact, it went from being a crime to stand up as a conscientious objector to it becoming a right, a human right to stand as a conscientious objector. And that's enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, your right to freedom of conscience. Mm-hmm. And what we're saying is that in the 21st century, we've got a very similar situation. Instead of being conscientious objectors, what's happening for the activists is actually they're standing up as conscientious protectors.
Yeah.
They're standing up to protect. And they are being criminalized, they're being charged, they're being taken to court nowadays for standing up and speaking the truth on the harm, the serious harm that's happening, because it's not a crime to cause that harm to the earth. And it's only a matter of time before that flips. Yeah. And instead of the conscientious protector being the criminal, it will be the state actors and it will be the corporate actors who are recognized to be the criminals in this activity. So this is a very powerful leverage that we're using. And in fact, we have a campaign now called Mission Life Force, because after all, this is about protecting the lives of not just human, but non-human inhabitants of our earth and the earth itself. And we're encouraging those who sign up to become earth protectors as part of the Earth Protectors Trust Fund to fund the putting in place of ecocide as an international crime. We're kind of, it's like crowdfunding for an international crime.
Right.
But we're inviting those who are on the front line to use this document as evidence of being a conscientious protector. Here I am, here's my document that says I've actually legally signed up as a trustee of the Earth Protectors Trust Fund. So therefore my intent is one of peace. I'm coming here to stop the harm that's happening and to use this in court. And indeed, we have a number of court cases that are coming up this summer here in the UK of activists who have been charged, they're being prosecuted for preventing their harm. It's fracking in this case. And this is going to be heard for legal argument in our Crown Courts in two of the cases in July time. So this is very exciting for us to see whether or not the judiciary itself is more expansive in its thinking to say, you know what, this legal argument, just as it applied to conscientious objectors, also applies today for conscientious protectors. And indeed, that there's missing criminal law here, just as there was back then with the conscientious objectors who were saying this is potentially unlawful. We don't agree with the harm that's happening. And indeed, international criminal law was put in place to say whether or not it was lawful to go to war or unlawful, to make genocide an
Yes.
international crime. And so likewise for us with ecocide becoming an international crime. So this is very exciting for us, because essentially what we're doing is we're bringing an ethical argument forward into criminal courts, because criminal courts are all about justice, and arguing the truth of the position of those who are standing as conscientious protectors, using existing law, but saying now put it in a 21st century context, and to give it context, examine what that serious harm is, so that the judiciary itself can actually give comment to say whether or not there's missing crime there to stop it from happening. And that's very exciting. This is emergent space, if you like, as to where law
Yeah.
is probably going to move towards.
It's the entire shift, isn't it? Bringing
Yeah.
out an entire platform, a totally different view on things. And I'm
Yeah.
just thinking of, the person protecting their homestead.
Yeah.
They have the right to have a gun and shoot somebody on their property if they're coming on their property to cause harm.
Yeah.
And that, especially in America, that seems to be the right.
Yeah.
But if you've got somebody else standing, what did you come for? Oh, the post. But it's for other people. And Rennie Davis is a person I've interviewed a lot. He is an activist, has been for a long time, a lawyer as well,
Yeah.
and fighting for the rights of humanity and planet. And another one I know that you will love to connect with. And he says that we have to step up in our activism and be
Yeah.
prepared to pay that price if it means having to go to the law, but that the practicality of what you're standing for in a lot of ways cannot be disputed.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about the genocide, we know that's wrong. Well, if we're standing up to protect our homestead, the planet, right, and the right of this land that feeds us and the people on it, how can that be a crime?
Well, it's very easy, because the criminal laws that are in place are whether or not you're obstructing, for instance, business. Remember, law is stacked in favor of business now.
Yes.
It's not stacked in favor of the activist at all. And so this is the missing crime, if you like. Taking ecocide into the International Criminal Court to recognize this as an international crime to stand alongside genocide, then gives the legal leverage and protection to those who are actually essentially whistleblowing, if you like,
Yes.
on behalf of the earth. So the biggest problem we have today is that most activists have no backbone of legal support behind them when they
Right.
stand up and speak out, and indeed take action to try and prevent and stop that which is dangerous, the dangerous industrial activity. If you will, what we have is state-sanctioned industrial immunity from prosecution. So the laws that are in place, and this is really the case since the mid-20th century, law has on the whole been put in place as a result of those who have the money, which tends to be big transnational corporations at an international level. And indeed, that's what's pushing it today. You have TTIP and other things attempting to be pushed through at an international level. That gives zero protection whatsoever for civil society at large, and certainly zero protection for the earth. And indeed, we have governments such as our own getting rid of laws that are hindering industrial process, in particular if it's industrial activity that just so happens to be very harmful, such as fracking. So this is about actually taking into the International Criminal Court the crime that's missing. And there's a very simple route there to do this. Often people have this mistaken idea that it takes years and years and years to put in place a law, and therefore will take even longer if it's not at a national level, that it would be longer at an international level. That's not actually the case with international criminal law. Serious crime is often put in place at times of emergency. I mean, that's when genocide was put in place, war crimes, crimes against humanity. And when that happens, it happens very fast. And indeed, crimes of aggression took just 2 years before it was actually tabled at the critical point of having it presented and then tabled and agreed. And indeed, it's just been signed off in December. with enough of a majority that it will go through now. So it's a very similar thing here. We have a fast track legal route. We know how we can do this. It's just simply an amendment to an international document. All it requires is for a member state or a group of heads of state to take this forward. However, here's the thing. Those states that are most in need of a law of ecocide are those who are on the front line of climate change.
Yeah.
Because there is a direct correlation between dangerous industrial activity, such as the activities of ExxonMobil, Shell, who are now being forced in civil courts to show their evidence, to show that they knew even back in the 80s and the 70s that what they were doing was aggravating climate change. And so it's those small island states that have nothing to do with those industries that are most adversely impacted. They're on the front line, and they're the ones that most require this law. And here's the problem, the huge hurdle they have to overcome. They don't even get a seat at the table because they don't have the money to take this forward. It costs money to take delegates to The Hague, to the International Criminal Court. It costs money to get them over to New York, to be there to vote with their delegates, with their lawyers, with their attorney generals, and so on and so forth. And here's the thing, that's what we can help with. That's what civil society can do. So it's bringing together two entities. Those who can, the small island developing states, they can take this forward. And those who care, and that's the Earth Protectors. All of us who care can sign up to the Earth Protectors Trust Fund, become Earth Protectors in law, which gives added protection for those who are on their own front line, and help fund the law that we want to have put in place, taken into the International Criminal Court. And that's very exciting. That's what we're doing with the Mission Life Force campaign. Our mission, if you like, is literally to help protect and defend the lives of humanity and the Earth and future generations. If you will.
It's a David and Goliath, isn't it? Corporations and governments, governments are going to protect the corporations because they keep them in power. And everything is all about, the backroom deals, which go to the first show, folks. We talk about the backroom deal because this Ecocide was something thought of back in the 70s and was a backroom deal to close it off. So, and everything you've done since you've taken up the mantra here is to make sure that everything is out in the open, so there can't be any backroom deals. But I think what we're looking at, if you just look at the whole change of the world right now politically, is that we know as things have been going, and really, quite honestly, the Gong Show in the States has kind of really brought this up to the to the full view, is change has to happen politically. The corruption in governments around the world is just saturated, and we, the people of the planet, will not take it anymore, no matter whose government it is. We want, full exposure. We want you, because they've got to remember they're a civil servant. They're here working for the people and their country, yet it seems to be they get into power and they forget all about the people. It's about maintaining that power, and it's time for the people to take that power back. Well, what you've done is just given them an empowerment of how they can be a part of that. It's not just a question, come and fund us, is by signing. You've become part of that platform, part of that movement,
And that actually acts as a safeguard for these small island developing states, because as they take this forward, there will be pushback from big transnational corporations, but also from major states, carbon major states, those who depend or just perceive that their economy must still remain a carbon economy and a fossil fuel economy. And so the safeguard is also in it being very visible that hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people across the world are funding this to take it forward. And it creates a resilience for those small island developing states to take it forward. If you're a tiny sinking nation in the middle of the Pacific and you're getting pressure from Trump, say, to say, we're going to withdraw what finance we give you from the American government if you continue with this law because this is going to save your lives. We're going to withdraw our $20,000 we give you per annum. Well, we can take that out into our network. We can take that out into public domain and say, look, we're not going to let this happen. We're going to make a lot of noise about it. We're going to make sure that it gets into the press. But also, actually, that country won't buckle because it knows it's got the financial support and wherewithal to continue taking
Yes.
forward this law. It's not actually going to need to come out of their own GDP, which is already under
Yeah.
extreme stress as a result of the latest cyclone or rising sea level, tsunami, whatever disaster, climate disaster has hit them and is hitting them with increasing regularity. And this is absolutely vital. You know, all their GDP is being used to shore up
Yeah.
emergency provisions as a result of climate change. So we can at least be the ones that help finance their flights, their accommodation, their food, their overheads to just get to the meetings so that they can sit there, be fully resourced and be in the meetings where they need to be.
Right.
To
Be present.
yeah,
Yeah, you're helping
absolutely.
them fight the bully. I mean, a bully will has the empowerment when nobody else will stand, up to the bully.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing is, you're saying you're not alone. We're here right with
Absolutely.
you. And
Yeah, and we stand with you. We stand
yes,
behind you. We
yeah,
stand with you. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. This is
And,
it.
we know that we've tried this whole individualism. It's me, myself, and I, the very narcissistic
Yeah,
view of life. And we've seen that it doesn't work. It doesn't work
yeah,
for society. It doesn't work for us
yeah,
individually because
yeah,
we really are community based. We
yeah.
love to be a part of a tribe, part of a village, part of a
Mm,
community. We want to know that we've contributed to that and there's the harmony of our village and that everybody in it has a role to play and that the
yeah,
village has got your back. And I
yeah,
think we're going back to that mentality where I stand with you, I stand for you, I stand
yeah,
beside you.
yeah,
And we can't sit back and just, well, as long as I'm all right, Jack.
yeah.
I don't care about anyone else because it's going to affect you anyway, whether you acknowledge it or not. And we have to step up. And you've made it so easy because here's that piece of paper saying, I am committed to
Yeah,
this. This is also my protection. It's my voice. And my contribution is now going to support those underdogs that are just being trodden on left, right, and center. As you said, not only by the ecological things that are happening to them,
mm,
the resources just to keep their head above water, but
yeah,
fighting the giant. And
mm,
I think we're really in an era right now where those giants' legs are being cut off, and the people are rising up and saying, no more, we're going to stand together. And this
mm,
is the only way that you're really going to get the shift that you really need and to force the issue with government, with international law, is when the people stand up as a chorus and
yeah,
say, we're with this movement and we're
yeah.
not going anywhere.
Exactly. No, this is absolutely right. And also, it gives strength to something more. It gives strength to the morality and
Mm,
that's being put forward here. Remember this: the bedrock of international criminal law is morality.
yeah,
It's about justice. It's about justice for humanity, and we're saying, okay, we need now. This is about expanding
yeah,
our responsibilities, our duties, our responsibilities. Criminal law is always about safeguarding our duties and responsibilities, and that's very important. It gives the enforcement. So yes, you have the right to life, but actually, the person who's holding the gun to your head has a right and responsibility not to kill you, not
right.
to take your life. And that's what criminal law safeguards, the rights and the responsibilities that we have to uphold. So the bedrock, if you like, of international criminal law is morality and conscience. And you'll see that this is absent elsewhere in
Yeah,
international law. When you're looking at something like TTIP, for instance, secret backdoor deals between governments and corporations to facilitate the advancement of dangerous developments without any regard whatsoever to the adverse consequences of it. So it has to be that the right avenue to address what's happening in the world today is within the remit of the International Criminal Court. And partly also because it's not happening elsewhere.
yeah,
You look to the International Court of Justice, well, it has no teeth. You get an advisory opinion, but because that government's corrupt, it's going to choose to ignore it. You get a judgment from a civil court over there. Well, that corporation, it's at worst it has to pay up a fine. But the International Criminal Court is accountability that's happening
yes,
to the directing mind, and that means the individuals who are in positions of power. That it's actually known as the superior responsibility principle. The directors, the CEOs, the ministers, those who are making the decisions
yeah,
that are leading to directly causing the ecocide to happen, or even those ministers, say, who are turning a blind eye, the willful recklessness, if you will, of refusing to stop it in the knowledge that that will cause harm. That's about accountability at the very top end. And that's very important because it actually attaches itself to individuals, not to
Yes.
the fictional corporation, which is just a piece of paper where all you can do is levy a fine. This is actually about saying you can be taken to a criminal court of law, and you can be locked up for this, and your company can be closed down.
Right.
And that's vital, because that's what actually safeguards and protects, and it provides a defense, a proper defense to all those who are standing up and speaking out on behalf of the earth, to be able to turn around and say, well, we're doing that because that's actually a crime over there. You're in a completely different ballpark.
Right.
You then have the judiciary with you. You then have the policing of the state with you. You then have the government with you. Those who aren't, they're the criminals.
Right.
No.
The consequences, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
we've lived far too long where there aren't any consequences, there aren't any accountability.
Yeah.
I interviewed a wonderful young reporter from India on some wonderful innovations that he discovered that, are out of necessity. I learned so much about India from him and how corrupt it is. And you say there's so much that needs to be done, and there is money raised to do it, but it never gets there because going through the greasy hands, the sticky hands. And it's if you are going after that individual, that particular politician, that particular CEO, and you're hitting them, in their quote pocket, it's so much harder to go for a corporation, because then the lawyers come in and you never get anywhere. Going for those individuals, you're taking the skittles down one by one.
But actually,
do they really want to go to jail for their company, right? Oh, I've got to go to jail for the rest of my life for this. It's the company,
But also remember this, shareholders will lose confidence in a company that's committing a criminal act.
Yes.
And so it's
do they want to be a part of it? Do they want to be seen as a part of it, right? Under criminal investigation, do you really want to be a part of that?
I mean, it's very interesting when criminal law is put in place, and in particular this does apply to international criminal law, but also when you have an international crime in place, then it's transposed into national legislation. But even at a national level, Enron was particularly interesting. Fraud, the criminalization of fraud. Enron collapsed.
Yes.
Recognize that it was criminal activity.
Right.
This is very important. It's very different from, taking a piece of civil litigation against a corporation for a breach of pollution regulations. Well, that's just a fine. It's catch me if you can legislation.
Yeah.
You can continue. It's not going to bring the company down.
No.
But criminal law can, and that's very powerful.
But I think there's something that's really powerful here is so many times you hear people say, well, what can I do? I'm just one person. I'm just a small flea in this bag. What can I do? Well, by signing this document, by become part of the movement, you've just empowered yourself to be something, to have a voice, to be a part of it. What can I do? This is what you can do. Because the more people that are signing it, the more I don't want to call them soldiers, because we're not in for a fight. You can't wage war on peace. We're peace advocates, and we're just not going to take this anymore. And the more of us there in that harmony, we're going to drown you out by song.
There's a phrase in law that we use to draw the red line. And you draw the red line, you use a red pen when you're amending legislation to take out the sections that no longer apply. And so this is what we're doing with Ecocide law. We're drawing the line, the red line, and that is no longer acceptable.
Yeah.
Can't go there. So, change what you're doing, go to the innovation in the other direction, you'll get all the help and assistance you require. So dirty energy, you have to now, by law, become clean energy. And if you don't, then you will be held to account in a criminal court of law for that. And so ultimately it gives a choice, but it gives a choice that is enabled and empowered to be non-harmful.
Yes.
And of course, with every law, you give a transition period. For instance, European directives here In Europe, we have anything between 6 months and 2 years to transpose that directive into existing law, and anything that runs contrary to it, the red line, the red pen comes out and it's drawn through it. And it's the same thing here. You give a transition period for ecocide crime. You say, okay, this will now be put in place within, say, 5 years. You have 5 years to completely withdraw all activities out of those arenas, those areas that are dangerous and therefore shall be criminal under ecocide crime. And what you find is actually the shift happens dramatically fast because all investors will pull out very, very quickly. Why would you invest in something that's going to be a crime within so many years?
Right.
You
Do you find actually that if a company has complied and said, yes, okay, I accept this, we are going to change our practices, that then the investors are going to go, okay, I'm willing to give you more money to change and get that support? Have you come across that, or is there still resistance?
I haven't actually ever analysed whether or not more money flows from it. But what is very interesting, if we look at the abolition of slavery came because it was criminalized. And many of the companies that, I mean, remember, economies ran on slavery.
Yes.
Yes. Everything ran on slavery. And it was believed that you could never get rid of slavery. It's a necessity. The public demand it. It will lead to economic collapse. Well, none of those three reasons actually were found to be true. But what was very interesting was with the abolition of slavery, many of the companies just reinvented themselves.
Yeah.
In the other direction. And indeed, companies have a natural desire to not only survive, but thrive.
Yeah.
So when the writing's on the wall, that's what you do, because that's where you'll get the money, that's where you get the investment, and you can turn that around. So, I mean, in the UK, there were a number of companies that actually, amazingly, completely changed what they were doing. Rathbones Bank, I mean, they used to build the slave boats, and then they became ethical bankers instead, amazingly. But even some companies actually became the policers of the oceans and went out to chase because they had their ships. Others, they started trading in tea in China instead. Yeah. So, it all depends on the company.
It's all a question of, it's the willingness, isn't it?
It's not so much the willingness, it's the necessity. Because once it becomes a crime, you're going to go to prison for it.
Right, exactly.
You have a choice.
Yeah.
Be held to account in a criminal court of law, and therefore no longer be able to sail your boat.
Right. Right.
Summertime with on the high seas, or actually get your act together and do the right thing by society, humanity, the earth, and future generations. And companies who recognise that this is solution driven rather than punishment driven, I will see the entrepreneurial opportunity to really drive forward the innovation in the other direction, because it will create jobs.
Yes.
That's everything,
I mean, with a number of the interviews that I've done, and a lot of awareness that's opened up for me is that how many people, if I'm waiting for my government to change, I'll be dead and buried. I'm going to get out there and create the change. And the amount of innovations and technologies and systems that have been provided, and they're saying they're not waiting for government to catch up. They've either been privately funded, publicly funded, but they've gone out there. And there was a whole thing about, when Trump got in and wanting to kind of delete anything alternative and go back to, to fossil fuel and coal. There was a couple of people being interviewed, and they're saying, look, we've been doing this for 30 years. We've already closed 9 coal mines. And what we've done is we've taken every single one of those people and re-educated them into a new job, enter a new paradigm. And most of the time for people, it's the fear, what happens to my job? Well, there's an opportunity for you to grow and be taught into something else that is probably more sustainable, better on your health, and most certainly better on the planetary health. So a lot of this has to come around of that fear. People drive that fear, but what, slavery gone, what happens to my, my fields, who's going to do them now? But there's always an option.
Who invented the washing machine?
Yes.
Innovation,
Yeah, but that's the thing, is that innovation, I mean, it's there is no limit to it. And when you set people free, and out of necessity. We need, and that's when these wonderful things come about.
Yeah.
And we see so much progress. And
Yeah.
especially if you put the parameters, it has to be eco-friendly. It can't harm the planet. It can't harm another human.
Yeah.
Already, that, you know, that's the restraints that you've got. And I'm seeing some incredible innovations coming up out of that.
This is
It's
it. It's
time for us
already
to put
there.
more light on that, isn't it?
Well, this is it. I mean, you know, solutions are already there. They're already
Yes.
happening in a
Yes.
micro level. All Ecocide law will do, in essence, is
Support it.
exponentially
Yeah.
accelerate that
Yeah.
to a macro level almost overnight. There'll be a major scaling up because it will become mandatory rather
Right.
than voluntary. And that's very important because the flow of finance will suddenly shift into that innovation the other direction
Yeah.
in a very big way. And because it's mandatory through law, that creates enormous change like nothing on earth. I mean, with the abolition of slavery, it was proposed that there be a 7-year transition period. And of course, slaves revolted. You know,
Right. So 7 years, you can't be kidding. I'm not going to do this anymore.
exactly. And the transition period, when all said and done, certainly at the UK end, it was 18 months.
Uh-huh.
And you know, nobody went out of business.
Right.
You know, these companies all reinvented their wheels. In fact, they were given financial assistance. Very sadly, there wasn't any financial assistance given to the slaves who
No.
suffered the trauma, who
Right.
were still alive. But it
Mm.
was given to those companies, and they reinvented their own wheels and the innovation the other direction. And indeed, our economy thrived on it. So it's a fallacy to think that we can't do it.
Yeah.
It is actually doable, and we have done it a number of times in history. And you know, we can do it again.
Yeah, I mean, there's innovations that are out there. If you're a company that has to change, you're not reinventing the wheel. Just pay attention to what's already out there. And then, you know, change the money support into adapting and adopting that technology that's already there. You know, take off the blinkers, you know, and understand it's already happening. And if you integrate it into your system, you know, that transition is going to be so much faster.
Of course, absolutely. So yes, this is about really radical change in a very fast way. It is the legal fast track. We can move very fast with it. All it requires is some good financing. We believe we can do this through civil society to a large amount. We think all that's required up front for us to really roll this out as a global campaign is 1/10 of what we will raise through civil society. So that's great. We're just looking for funding at the moment to help get it onto a global platform. We know we need cybersecurity, for instance,
Yes.
for our online platforms. We want to get it translated into various languages. We just want to scale up our operation. At the moment, the campaign we have, it's there. It's at missionlifeforce.org. It's, you know, please do sign up and share in a very big way. We just want to get this out there in a very big way, and we know we can do it, and we know how to do it, which is really exciting.
It's kind of, in a way, you're Netflixing. If everybody contributes, you know, so much, you know, and you've got so many people that contribute, you know, you're not, for those that have got the big money, yes, but for the, you know, those that don't, you're going to pay $9 a month or $10 a month on Netflix. So $10 a month in supporting this is a couple of coffees for most people. And, and if you've got so many people doing it, there is your funding, right? So it's a lot of, oh, it's going to take so much money. Invite many people, less money, more more abundance. You know?
But also, you know, it is that thing of every penny, every cent counts, and we kept the entry level as low as possible, $5, €5. And we've taken away any age determinant for you to sign up and become in law an earth protector as a trustee to the Earth Protectors Trust Fund. And what we found is that we've actually met people who have said, I've signed up my new baby.
Ah, lovely. Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, but get this, Sarah, it's lovely that they've created an email for them, an email address. And the first email is their signed up documents to be an earth protector. Isn't that beautiful? So that when that child grows up, They
Yeah.
can then, once they can read, they can go in and they can
Yeah.
find their very first email
Yeah.
with one saying, I am in law a protector of this earth. Isn't that wonderful?
But it's also kind of setting that precedence for that child.
Yeah,
You're born, you were given this role as protector,
yeah,
at birth, and it's
yeah,
because, um, yes, we as adults, are meant to be the protectors of our children, of that planet.
yeah,
But we also know the way children are today, they are
yeah,
so much wiser, they're so much
yeah.
faster in
Mm,
adjustment, that, if we could get out of their way and
yeah,
support them, they're going to bring about those change
yeah,
radically, way, way faster.
yeah.
So I think it's like, we are their guardians, their custodians, but at the same time, let them be our teachers. And
Mm,
because they really are
yeah,
amazingly
yeah,
innovative, but it's not just the creative juices. It's also, I find, because I've interviewed somebody as young as 9 had written her first book, and I was
oh,
expecting to kind of to maybe have to change the way I did it, and she was just so rational, logical,
yeah,
simplifying it. We as adults want to over compliment,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And what I love of what you're doing is you've taken all that complicated stuff, you've gone and done it back room, right? You're all that, the red lines, everything else, and what you've presented to the public is a few bucks, sign, be a part of the world, savior,
yeah,
and it's as simple as that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So, it's, let's not make it complicated, folks.
yeah,
And if you want to be immersed, or do any more, then most certainly you can.
yeah,
But if
yeah.
you say, what can I do? This is a wonderful first step.
Well, this is it. Join our mission and help
Yeah.
protect our beautiful earth.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
live here.
yeah,
It's so,
exactly.
you want it to be around not only for the rest of your life, but for your children, etc., etc.
Mm,
So, it's time that we do need to participate in it,
yeah,
and make sure that we are a part of it.
yeah.
Um, so this law, how many countries have signed up? How many people have you got on board?
Well, the sign up only happens when it is actually presented into the International Criminal Court. So at the moment, what we're doing is we're working with a number of small island developing states who will take that and present it. With the funds that we raised this year, we will be taking in delegates into the International Criminal Court at the end of the year in December, which is every year the annual Assembly of State Parties is held then, and we will be making presentations there just as we did last year. We'll do it bigger, more resource this year with more people signing up. That will allow us to bring more delegates so that they can be really heard. And then it will be a decision on their part as to when they finally announce. And that will partly be informed by us now being in a safe enough space where we have enough trustees on board, where we have the finance in place, to take it forward and announce that then from those countries they are tabling it. When that happens, that triggers a whole process. Then there has to be a review conference. Each country that's a signatory to their own statute, they're given notification of a minimum 3 months that that's happening. It's very short.
Hmm.
And then there's a review conference, or it's rolled on to the next Assembly of State Parties. And then it's a matter of countries coming on board once the text is agreed to sign it.
Right.
So it can happen very, very quickly. The steps are not that complicated, actually. And it's been done before. Crimes of aggression has been
Mm.
put in place in that
Right.
way. So
It's
we're
just the
following
snowball, right?
a
It's just once things start going, it snowballs.
yeah,
And
very much so.
yeah.
And the thing is also, for all the member states, it's just one vote per member state. So it doesn't matter what size you are,
Mm.
which is a very just system. It's based on justice, unlike climate negotiations, where you can bring as many negotiators as you like to the table. So, for instance, both America and the UK, with climate negotiations, there are over 2,000 negotiators there, representing our countries, whereas some of these small island developing states, they will have one
Right.
negotiator from 5 states.
Yeah.
And when you have 34 working group meetings happening all at the same
Yeah.
time, which meeting do you go to? It's just not
Right.
possible. Just not
Yeah.
possible. So you can see where you get political. I mean, you use the word bullying.
Yeah.
It is that arm wrestling that
Yeah.
happens where the biggest numbers win. For the International Criminal Court route, different system entirely.
Excellent.
One vote per member state, and that's very important. So that allows then for justice to be undertaken, so long as we can actually finance those countries to have delegates there, to have the assistants, to have their lawyers there, to stand alongside and behind them as they take it forward so that they're fully resourced, then we know that we can do this. which is very exciting. But together.
Yes,
What we can
the
do is
word together, that's the whole thing.
together.
You must have a few countries in Europe, most certainly, that are right behind you on this, that, have any of them stepped up and say, okay, we're there, we're with you, what do you need, how do we expand? Because you can see that there are, Norway, most certainly they're already so far ahead, in their ecological thinking and in the way they treat their participants, their people in their country. So the support from countries like that must already be in place.
Certainly after 9 years of legally advising on this, there have been a lot of inroads made into, certain countries who will, in due course, want to be seen to be supporting this, which is great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What is the hope for North America? I mean, probably the rest of the world will all be signed up before America will be, especially under the current regime there. But what? How would, if everybody else is signed up, this becomes a law, etc. Then you're actually taking on a different giant, because it's international law. It is criminal then, but that will be a whole total different battle, won't it?
What to remember is that governments change.
Yes.
Presidents change. What one president says will never happen, another one will come in and put in place.
Yeah.
We're just preparing the road for your next president.
Yeah. Yes. We're hoping that soon. Yeah.
And your current one may well be indicted. Well, no, who knows?
It's happening. We're all praying. I think what we're seeing a movement of right now, you've got the Me Too movement, you've got many other movements there, but I think what we've seen, you needed somebody like who knows who in America, just to show the world how corrupt and how wrong we went. Because it's not just that country. It now became, a vision of other countries and leaders that were in place, that complacency, I'm okay in my ivory tower. And now, the accountability, the consequences of your actions. This law puts that on into it, and that I don't care what your position is, you're going to be held accountable. And it's given the people that empowerment, hasn't it, to say, I'm not just a little speck, on the sand. I can stand up, I can have a voice, I can sign something that is a legal document that says that I'm here fighting for the planet. And it changes everything completely. You've empowered the people. And this is what people need. They need to understand, we need to stand together, we need to step up. And whether you're just stepping up in small steps or whether you're taking those leaps, and don't forget, those first steps all of a sudden start becoming a jog, and then a run, and then a marathon, so we have to start somewhere. So this is a perfect time for this to be happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everyone, there's different ways of stepping up and giving expression to what it is to be an earth protector in our lives. It's not for everyone to be on the front line, but equally there's a lot to be done behind the scenes as well, within communities and just at an individual and personal level as well. And one of the things that we are very much not doing with inviting people to sign up and become signatories of the Earth Protectors Trust Fund as a trustee, we're not imposing any financial or legal onerous obligations. We're inviting, it's a one-off gift of funds into it, but we're also inviting individuals to give expression to what that means.
Yes.
And an expression of love and care for the earth. There's not many trust fund documents you'll find, or any legal documents, many legal documents that have the word love in there, love and peace. But we do, and it's an expression of intent to engage with this world from a place of non-violence, if you will, from deep care and deep love for humanity and the earth, which is hugely important here.
Really, really important that we step into love, because we know we've seen what hate can do. We're really tired of wars. We're tired of battling. We're tired of struggling, and also this isolation. that we seem to put ourselves into. And really, we do want to get back to that community, that sense of love, that sense of purpose, that sense of camaraderie. And, hating takes so much energy, but
Yeah.
love is so energizing, so having something that the saving the planet with love, it's really very, very simple. It's very, very simple.
It's not rocket science, is it?
No, no.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that we don't need to have complicated. You're doing all the complicated stuff. So you're making it easy for us to participate, to stand up, to
Yeah.
be a part of,
Yeah.
that beautiful gift of giving a newborn. Just to be able to say, I'm an earth protector, and to say it and own it, it's a wonderful gift to give yourself, for
Exactly.
your whole family.
Yeah.
Don't just do it as one lump of the family, do it
Yeah.
as each individual person in that family.
Yeah. And indeed, each individual can then take it or leave it.
Yes.
How we give expression to our intrinsic values and the intrinsic values that as we look to the earth and how we engage and participate on this earth is really a personal decision there.
Yes.
And this is the thing, we see this as an invitation to engage as custodians, as guardians or trustees of this earth, rather than owners. It's not
Yeah.
about ownership. It's part of our problem in law is that property law has taken precedence over trusteeship law. So in a way, what we're doing here is we're rebalancing that.
Yeah.
The scales of justice, if you like, are upside down at the moment, where he who has, and often it is a he or an it company, has the rights over a given territory because they have the property rights over it.
Right.
And that gives them absolute freedom. It gives them immunity from any form of prosecution for serious harm because we just don't simply have the laws in place. However, if it was a childcare proceedings, for instance, we don't own our children. We don't have absolute rights over them to cause serious harm, to abuse. If anything, we have a guardianship role over our children, and we have a duty and a responsibility not to cause serious harm, not to cause neglect. The opposite of the harm is the neglect. And so this is just an extension of legal principles that we already have with our engagement from human to human, to then expand that cycle of concern from human to non-human. So the same principles apply just as they do to each other as they do to the earth here.
Yeah.
And once we start understanding that we have duties and responsibilities to ensure that our earth is protected just as much as our home, our individuals within our communities are, then law has to play catch up. And that's precisely what Ecocide law is doing. It's realigning the scales of justice and ensuring that humanity, future generations, and the earth are protected. And
He's putting those corporations on notice too. Is that you can voluntarily step up and start changing your ways right now, and or you can wait for the law to come after you. But either way, you're going to have to change.
Exactly. It's just a matter of time. It really is. This is progressive law. This is where law is going. This is the kind of pioneering edge of where law is going to go, and it's inevitable. And indeed, it's common sense. At the end of the day. It's not rocket science. Yeah.
Right. And I find that a lot of the things with law became so much law in protecting the law that it kind of lost what it was there for in the first place. So when we go back to the grassroots, protect, to serve and to protect, that's what police are meant to do, but they started becoming the bullies themselves. As custodians of this planet, we need to serve and protect each other, and protect is against all harm. And because if you're harming the planet, you're harming humanity, because we're already seeing species become extinct, and at the rate we're going to be one of those species. So it's not just a moral thing or a legal thing, it's a necessity, folks. Things have to change, otherwise it's going to be a different conversation 10 years from now.
Absolutely, this is it. And you know what, together we are unstoppable.
Yeah. Absolutely. You know, you have the lead singer, but when you get that chorus behind them, you know, you've now got a harmony that is just one of those catchy songs that everybody wants to join in on. So thank you for being the lead singer in this. And I'm part of the choir here. I really am. I invite everyone else to join. You know, it doesn't matter what your voice is, right? Just come in and be a part of that choir, because the more you get your voice out there, because sign
Yeah,
up and be proud you've
yeah,
signed
yeah,
up. You know,
yeah,
let other people know why you've signed up, because it's such
absolutely.
a simple thing that you're doing, but it has such an enormous impact. And this is something you can very proudly say, I am an earth protector legally.
Yeah,
Right? So
yeah,
it's a,
in law, yeah.
so again, how do people become the earth protector? Also, if people need to reach out to you,
Yeah.
what are the ways?
So it's very simple. Go to missionlifeforce.org and sign up, become a legal protector. The legal document is there for you to read and to sign it. It's as simple as that. And then the important bit is share it.
Yes.
Put this out to others, because the power, the resilience in it is in the building of the numbers.
Yeah.
And we've just recently gotten this out. We've kind of been going through a beta stage, if you will. We now know we want to scale this up in a very big way. That will require a bit of funding. We do have a second pot. All the money that goes into Mission Life Force is purely for bringing delegates and their lawyers and representatives into the United Nations, into the International Criminal Court for the key meetings.
Hmm.
The bedrock behind that, the foundations, is myself, my team here and in the Netherlands. None of the funding that goes into the Mission Life Force pot goes to us. It's only for taking the Ecocide law forward. Of course, we're the team behind the scenes making it all happen.
Hmm.
So there is a second pot, which you can find on the team page. Please gift into that. That would greatly help us. We're very keen to expand that, expand what we're doing, take it up another notch, actually a quantum leap. We know
Right.
we can do it. We know how to do it. So if you know anyone that's got big pockets who would like to help, please put them in touch. You can get us through the website very easily. We guarantee we'll respond to your email very fast.
Yes. And you know that there are some people with their pockets are so deep and they don't know what to do with it. Well, what a wonderful
We
gift.
can help them there.
Oh, exactly, exactly. And it's you know, a little shared out goes a hell of a long way. But you know, every now and again, that chunk is
Yeah,
oh, you know, now we can take that quantum leap and really go and do something with it. And it's
yeah.
you know, I'm always playing I've got a program in the community coming up later, and I was just actually thinking during the show, it should be actually on the ecological solutions, so getting a sponsor behind that book that then raises money to go into that funding. We'll talk, but you know,
Sounds great.
that's what it's about. And it's like there are people who with a lot of money who have that conscience that want to put it into something that's going to make a difference.
Yeah,
All right, so
exactly.
this is making a difference, folks,
Big time. Yeah.
and big difference. And don't you want to see those corporations that have been getting away with it for so long, that have been damaging this planet for so long, be held accountable?
Mm, mm,
Right? And it
exactly.
just, they may not even ever have to be served. It just could be the sheer fact that this is law that makes them change their ways.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
we're coming to get you, organizations. It's time for you to change. The people have spoken. They're signed. They're advocates. They're
But
protectors.
also, remember this, Sarah, there are people in these organizations who would absolutely love to see their companies turn around.
Yes.
This is
Yes.
the law that will allow that to
Yeah.
happen. You know,
You've
it's
got to, so let's do it. There's no more putting it off. You know, now you have to do it. And so it
exactly.
gives those people the empowerment to force
Yeah.
that change. Yeah.
Yeah, and indeed there are individuals sitting on boards of directors who would love to see that happening
Yeah.
too. So this really does empower those who want to do
Yeah.
greater good for
Right.
humanity,
Yeah.
for the earth. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very much an empowerment law, if you will. Yeah,
Well, I love the fact of how you've made it inclusive, you've made it simple, and
thank you.
easy to understand, because there's a lot of things out there that,
Great.
you know, and basically it's a law that says you can't hurt the planet or the people on the planet anymore, otherwise you as an individual are held accountable.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's no longer the fine hiding behind. The
Yeah.
thing is, we're going after the individuals.
Exactly.
And when you
Exactly.
do that, it becomes personal.
Well, It's how we deal with criminal law. It's very
Exactly.
simple. We have a saying, an old saying, a Latin saying in law, when malum in se becomes malum prohibita. And what that means is when something is so wrong in and of itself, we prohibit it.
Yes.
Just as we did with slavery, just as we did with genocide, just as we did with apartheid. And now here we are in the 21st century.
Yeah.
The big issue of the day is ecocide.
Yes.
So we're just actually progressing law along an inevitable timeline, if you will, of how it has to respond to the issues of the day, or the issues of the century, if you will. And
when enough is enough, changes have to happen, and enough is enough. It can't go on anymore, just like slavery couldn't go on anymore. There has to be a change, and then it's only by implementing the law and forcing that change, and that you see people go, okay, I have to now.
Exactly.
Right?
I mean, you saw it when, in the UK, when we brought in overnight, it was now illegal to drive without a seatbelt.
Yeah.
Overnight that was put in place.
Yes.
And, within a matter of weeks, it was just a new normative. And that's what happens. It shifts normatives overnight.
Yes.
And instead of it being the normative that companies can and do cause mass damage and destruction or loss of ecosystems through their dangerous industrial activity,
Right.
it will become the exception overnight.
Right. Yeah.
Because there will be no appetite for it. There will be no finance for it. There will be no political will.
Right.
There will be no state sanctioning of industrial immunity, because it will be a crime. So you're not going to go to it.
Right.
It was with the abolition of slavery. Overnight, it suddenly became absolutely untenable to have a black in chains walking down the street. It's the same thing. It fundamentally shifts how society perceives an issue of the day. And this is the beauty of it. You don't actually need to persuade big corporations to come and do whatever, because we're dealing with a justice issue. Indeed, big transnational corporations don't even have a seat at this table. Only those countries that are taking it forward and that are already signatories to the International Criminal Court can actually sit at that table. And that's very important. Unlike climate negotiations, where it's actually financed by big industrial activity, that whole negotiation process is financed by it. In international criminal law is not a negotiation process. It's a process of deliberation, of presentation. You present the law, it's amended, it's agreed upon, and then it's just a matter of accrual of signatories, and there is no veto, which is fantastic.
And most people, really, when you look at it, they may not like the law, but they're going to comply with the law because they don't want the consequences of if they don't.
Absolutely.
And, you've always got your criminal activity, and there will always be that type of thing. But what we've been seeing around the world is criminal activity right up front. In your face and going, hey, right? And so what you're saying right now, not anymore. You have a choice to make now. Do you wish to be the criminal and pay the consequences, or are you going to come clean and change your ways?
Exactly. Literally, come clean.
Yeah.
I will use that phrase. Thank you for that.
The double
Sara,
thing.
thank you for hosting me on your wonderful
program. It's wonderful to have you back. I'm sorry it's so long, but everything in good timing, everything when it's right. And I love the fact that you've made it so simple. For people to stand up and say proudly, I'm an earth protector, and that it takes so little to be a participant in that, but to also then to be able to turn around to other people and say, look how simple it is and how easy it is for us to do it. So if they're saying to you, I don't know what to do, this is the first step.
It is indeed. Go to missionlifeforce.org.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thanks so much, Polly. And down the road, want to have you back again when we can talk about the progress, okay?
I'd love that. Thank you so much, Sara.
Thank you. And if everyone else out there, remember, you are the change that we seek. You can participate in this. It's not difficult. And imagine every single one of us, everybody in your family, all of your friends signing up, even if it is only €5, if that's all you can afford. But look at the impact of the numbers and what you're doing, and just see how that grows. See how it grows. And you could be able to stand tall and proud and say you were a part of it. So until next time, folks, bye for now.
Bye-bye.
For more wonderful shows like this, please go to selfdiscoveryradio.com, podcasts, and see our lineup. And if you wish to support us, we have a funded button. Please stay tuned for our next show.